Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Pranic Healing Podcast. Today we have a very special friend of mine and colleague, Dr. Albert Lee. Dr. Lee is a board-certified podiatrist and chiropractor in the state of New York City, and his office is in Manhattan, New York City. And Dr. Lee has been in pranic healing for over 15 years. And today we're going to talk about ethics, especially ethics as a doctor and ethics in terms of his work ethics and in terms of the different virtues in pranic healing. And the virtues that we're going to talk about are basically honesty and non-lying and constancy of aim and effort. So please welcome Dr. Lee.
Yay.
All right, welcome, Dr. Lee.
So my name is Dr. Lee. Just like how Dr. Yuan said, I am a podiatrist, a foot doctor. Also do foot surgery. I also am a chiropractor. Also, I've been in pranic healing for roughly about 15 years, like you have said. I got introduced in May of 2009. Actually, that's more like 14 years actually now, right? So May 1st or 2nd of 2009 is when I took the basic course. So it has been quite a bit of time. So yeah, I've been in the community, and then I'm happy to kind of speak to Dr. Yun about it. I know that this is a pretty good platform, so I want to be able to make sure that I can share my inputs. And with the background that I have in healthcare practitioners, thought that I could actually contribute to the topics that are very interesting as a doctor's perspective. You can see exactly how doctors work.
Absolutely. Also. Yeah. So, in terms of our background, for Dr. Lee, for the audience that does not know, Dr. Lee and I, we kind of started around the same time. Dr. Lee is, a year or two ahead of me. But in terms of using pranic healing for, the aspects of business, in terms of running a medical clinic, it's been very helpful. So I think that not only does this apply to anyone out there with more of a business or medical practice, but in general, in terms of your overall ethics when it comes to life and business. So Dr. Lee, please tell the audience, I know that before pranic healing, you were in chiropractic school and podiatry school, right? During the whole span of pranic healing, correct?
So I got into pranic healing in my later years of my senior years as a chiropractic student.
Okay.
I started to feel tingliness onto my fingers. That's one of the few reasons I actually got into pranic healing. Started to feel some weird sensation when I'm touching people's back and touch people's body. Before even I got to their body, I started to feel some kind of sensation. So that's exactly what I've been told. This is actually the energy aspect. So I started to dive deeper into it, and then I actually got the pranic healing into it because of that's actually one of the few reasons why I got into it.
Okay.
I've been practicing chiropractic as a and I did go back to school and then got my additional doctorates in podiatric medicine and residence in podiatric medicine also. During that time, I also sued as a student also, but now I'm actually out. I don't have any immediate plan to go back to school yet, so so I get to actually share my input as a doctor and then as a business person, as an entrepreneur, and how to use pranic healing. I don't use pranic healing on most of my patients. Few I use, but I do use it onto myself, onto my business principles, onto my practice principles, and things like this. So that's exactly what I reached out to Dr. Yun and said, hey, I want to be able to talk about these topics and then see how that, what I'm about to talk to is not only relevant to doctors, but to most of the people. So that's
right.
I wanted to talk
about. Yeah. So thank you for that recap. So it sounds like you started feeling the energy itself when you're doing the chiropractic work, and chiropractic's very hands-on, and we know for pranic healing, it's hands-off. So it's a very, again, complementary skill to have in terms of that clinical aspect. But then you mentioned the business aspect, which we're kind of getting into. And one of the virtues in pranic healing is honesty and non-lying. And that is a big part of ethics in terms of personal ethics, but also business ethics as well as medical ethics, right? Because that's a big boundary that we have to cross as doctors. So can you kind of explain what is medical ethics as a doctor? What does that mean? Medical ethics.
So, so that actually means it's very simple. It just means doing the right thing on and off the clinic. So when you're seeing with the patient, you do the right
Mm-hmm.
thing by the patient. When you are actually dealing with the insurance company, you do the right thing. So that's exactly what it comes down to. Ethics being able to provide the right services for the patient, and then being able to make sure that the patient's getting right quality of services from you. That's one thing that that you'll understand. Another thing that you also have to provide for the patient when you're not seeing the patient, when you're dealing with the insurance company, things like this. Also, it means that you are properly uh, billing for things that you have done. You know,
Absolutely.
for those people who are not practicing as a doctor, there's not really. It's more of an honor system if you look into it. So what that actually means to you is, let's say I saw Dr. Yun as a patient, and then let's say that I've done A, B, C, D. My notes, my medical notes will reflect that I've done all the services, but it actually comes
Mm-hmm.
down to honor of within me that I've done such procedures. So since that,
Mm-hmm.
things can be a little tough sometimes. A lot of doctors kind of try to finesse their way through and then say, I haven't done this, but
Right.
go ahead and they bill for another thing like this. It's really easy to be tempted to things like this, but when you actually know the energetic aspect, energy components of it, you are more or less to be set to do practice the honest and online. That's actually something that's very, very important. That actually is,
Right.
yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
actually one of the most important things that you do. And then one more thing
Yeah.
is things like, what are you doing for the patient? Is the service you're providing, are they the right treatment for the patient? Does the patient really need it? Do they really get the maximal the efficacy from your treatments, the things that you can do for the patient? Are you so there's another aspect of honest and online that you practice to
Mm-hmm.
each
Mm-hmm.
patient when they're coming to see you.
Right. So excellent. Thank you for sharing that information, Dr. Lee. I think that how I can kind of compare it is, as doctors, we hold a high position, right? We have a medical license for a reason. We have malpractice insurance for a reason, just to avoid these ethics traps, and you mentioned with the insurance system, right? You mentioned with treatments, and how I like to compare it is like even if you're like a pranic healer or an energy healer, and you can diagnose someone, right? You can diagnose someone the correct way or the wrong way, right? And if you diagnose them the wrong way, they might have, let's say, more treatments in the long term, and maybe you financially come more out of it, or maybe you might do a couple more things extra on top of it. So that's the analogy I get from the insurance model, right? You can kind of, because the insurance model is, like you said, it's like an honor system. It's like you're being honest about what you're diagnosing, what you're coding, what you're billing. And same thing for a pranic healer. You want to be very honest about what you're interpreting and how you assess and treat a client or a patient. So that's very important in terms of the medical ethics world. Let's transition to the business ethics, and I think a lot more people can relate to that because that's very tied close together for you, Dr. Lee, because you do run a private independent clinic practice, and you are very busy, and you see a lot of different patients, but you're also running the business side of it. So can you tell us a little bit more about the business side of ethics and how that coincides, with your medical ethics as a doctor?
So it's funny you kind of mentioned that because I think that the business ethics ties, at least for my circumstances as a person who provides services for the people, I'm sure that anybody in the service industry can relate to this also. In my opinion, I think that the medical ethic as a doctor is actually coming really hand to hand with the business ethics. So there's a two
Mm-hmm.
type of ethics that I actually like to be able to kind of tie down to. Number one thing is, like I said, to be able to do right things for the patient, right thing for the individuals. But there's also the ethics that you have, the right ethics you have to provide for your own business. What that actually means to
Mm-hmm.
you is your business as a living entity on its own, you also have to provide them the right ethics onto the business entity itself, or it could be your clinic, it could be your coffee shop or restaurant, whatever it may be. The ethics that you're providing for your business is also very, very important. And then you provide those ethics by being able to put the right amount of time, to be able to put the right amount of effort, so that you'll be able to get the right input. So you put the right input to get the proper output. There's no shortcutting in terms of you put very little amount of things expecting to have a multiple explosive output every single time. It just certainly does not work that way. So you always have to put and provide a constant the stream of effort and impact, so that you can continue to nurture that. So that's actually the business ethics that I'm talking about. Dr. You and I kind of spoke to each other before we started the podcast, and then that could also relate to things like constancy, aim, and effort. And then that's exactly what you want to kind of talk about also, and which kind of relates to it, because in order for you to be able to make sure that you provide the right ethics for your business, for your ethics, for your own practice, or whatever it may be, you always have to put the right amount of input to get the right amount of output. And that actually means that you are providing the right type of attitude to your business, to your client, to your patient. That's exactly what it means to me. And also, as a business owner, there's also ethics that kind of comes onto yourself also, because why don't I just kind of stop here and then tell you, hey, do the right thing for the people, do the right thing for business. A lot of people also tend to kind of short sell themselves and then say, oh, that's actually doing a good ethics to be able to. The right ethics would be to be able to do the right thing for the people who you are providing services to, and then for the entity you're working under, but also for yourself as well too. All three things has to be complying hand to hand in order to be able to provide the right ethics. That's what it means to me.
Yeah, I love that explanation, Dr. Lee, and it kind of reminds me of the, another topic for another day is spiritual business management, which is another course under pranic healing. But I like the triangle that you formed, where you kind of mentioned the three aspects, which is you as a practitioner, as a business owner, coinciding with the client or the patient, coinciding with your business entity that you're operating under. And I liked how you mentioned it's the inputs and the outputs, right? When it comes to ethics, the only where you can kind of mess up is your inputs, right? So if you're inputting the right things, like Master Cho describes, if you're planting the right seeds, you're planting the right actions, the outputs should reflect that from an energetic and from a business aspect in terms of finances and things like that. You're doing the right things to maintain that. So I think that's very important for, again, not only business owners, not only pranic healers, but anyone in general. The takeaway to keep in mind is to be very aware and conscious of your inputs, and to be very aware of the honesty and non-lying aspect, which is a virtue in terms of, not doing the wrong things for the patient, because not only that will that affect the patient, that will affect you as an individual, and that will affect your business entity. So thank you for sharing that, Dr. Lee. And then kind of moving on from that, Dr. Lee, from the, I think we talked about the medical ethics, we talked about the business ethics. Let's talk about work ethic, because your work ethic is above bar none. You are the most consistent. Let me put it this way. In terms of pranic healing, we have the virtue of constancy of aim and effort. And one of the people I think about that is, one of the best people is, Master Ko. He always, he's very ajna, and for non-pranic healers, ajna is the kind of the higher will aspect, and he's very organized, very chop, to the point, take action right away. And you're very much like that too, Dr. Lee. And your daily schedule is insane. I don't even know how a normal person can do it. But for the audience, just very briefly describe your schedule so they can get like a understanding of your work ethic, and then just describe for us the definition of what work ethic means, because that applies in so many different ways.
So right now I'm trying to build up 3 clinics. I have like I said, I'm a chiropractor and a podiatrist. So I have a chiropractic clinic, chiropractic only clinic. So that's number one. Podiatry or foot and ankle medicine only clinic. That's number two. And I have a combined model of chiropractic and podiatry combined model. So I have a clinic number three. I'm trying to grow 3 clinics simultaneously. On top of that, I also do real estate on the sides, and I also I try to dabble on the stock market also, which also needs some attentions as well on its own. And then I'm also
Absolutely.
father of 2 daughters, and then I also manage my family's real estate things also on site. So there are quite a bit of things that are actually going on at the same time. But I never thought myself to be like the definition of like chop 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 chop. It just kind of
Hmm.
required for me to be able to do all the things because like I said, that really kind of comes back. I know that you are trying to move forward with the topic, but I'm trying to go back and then kind of tell you the reason why I'm actually doing all that is because, like I said, there are ethics that actually are important to the patient, to the clients, to your customers, whatever and whatnot. But there's also ethics that you yourself are supposed to be accountable for. So that's exactly what I'm trying to live by. So that's actually my work ethics, and that's the ethics that I am providing for myself. I'm, when you are actually doing all these kind of things, you always have goals on your side. But if your goals are X, Y, and Z, you're supposed to have the willingness to be able to get there by that point, and then that can get there not only by the hard work, but not being afraid. I'm not saying that hard work get you to where you need to go, but what I'm trying to say is not being afraid of hard work to be able to get down dirty and then do all the things that are necessary to be able to get that done. I think that actually is really important. That's actually where my work ethic comes from, and that I think is important. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
I think that, you bring up a great point because in my mind, I was trying to separate these three topics, because they are a little bit different. But I like how you kind of regathered the conversation and brought it back that it really starts as a individual, right? It starts as you as a person. And in pranic healing, why we subscribe to the teachings so much and so dearly is that it's not just a energy healing modality. It's really a platform, a tool, a teaching that helps us become a better person overall and a better person to serve. And I think by what you just mentioned, it really starts from what it sounds like you as a individual, Dr. Lee, with your own principles on life. And you really truly follow those principles that you set for yourself, like the standards. And from these standards, you carry it over into your business. You carry it over into your medical practice when you see patients. So it's a very not disconnected, different types of rooms in the house, but it's all part of the same room itself, and that's the room that you're living by, the principles and the standards. And that's very important because I think that a lot of us, right, when we talk about these different aspects of these ethics, we might be stronger in one than the other, right? We might be stronger, let's say, ethics with a patient when we're working with a client, or we might be stronger with business ethics, but it's all, again, tied very closely together, which is very important. And then just to kind of describe, going back to my question, your schedule is very impressive. So please, for the audience, because when I get text messages from you at 4 a.m. and I'm still like dead asleep when I wake up at like 8 or 9, I'm like, oh, wow, Albert, because you tell me you wake up at 4 or 4:30 every day, 7 days a week. So for the audience that does not know your amazing yet insane schedule, please describe what time do you
Don't
wake
think it's
up, what do you
impressive,
do, and
but
then what do you end that day? Yes, please.
I wake up at 4 a.m., get to, and I do my work, and then I go to, I get to my work by 6, and I start to see patient from 7 till 7, and then I go home, and then I spend time with my family. That's actually my schedule. But my schedules are not dictated by what I want to do. I have a time schedules, and I follow the time schedule to the T. I know that I have not been good with this in the past, but I'm starting to learn. More you control your time schedules, more you are able to control your time. That's exactly how you actually are able to achieve more, because pranic healings and all the other things that we are actually talking about, doing our heart yoga, doing meditation, supposed to get you and propel forward. And then I was always under the notion, just by me, the virtue of just meditating, of course, that gets me to do more things, and I'm able to achieve more on, in each moment. But at the same time, I really have to apply I don't know about other people, but I really have to apply myself to be able to get the maximal output. And this is like how I like to be able to think about it. If I am able to achieve X, Y, and Z, and then if I'm able to do 25-30% more by being more diligent, then why don't I? Because I do have more than enough. Well, right now I have youth, but it's not going to be with me forever. At some point, my body's going to be tiresome and things like this, and it's going to be wearing out. So, in order for me to be able to do more, you have to achieve more. You have to really follow a T time schedule, and then you can always do more also. And for those people who can achieve more, I'm sure there'll be more opportunity to do more services, bring more impact, do more humanitarian work. I think all of those things can be achievable, but you need to have a larger capacity to achieve more in order to be able to do more. That's how I look at it. So even if you're doing 2-3 years, let's say, so this is how I look at it. If you are able to do so much input, so much output into, like for instance, you know, when when people are doing great like humanitarian things, some people do it over the course of the lifetime also, but some people do just so much in 2-3 years. How can that be? They have to have build up the capacity at some point. So that's how I also try to look at it from in my perspective also. That it's not really right now. I'm using it for my business, my family, and things like this. But I can use the same amount of output at some point to be able to divert into for the good of others as well. Also.
Yes. Well, I think that, pardon on your work ethic is extraordinary. And I think it is a role model for all your, patients, and especially for me, Dr. Lee, because I look at it as, we all have the same 24 hours in a day, right? We all have the same 7 days in a week. But I loved what you said is it's always that there's always more you can do, right? You can always squeeze that extra 1 or 2% out of your day. And when you do that consistently, like to the T, to your schedule, over a period of 2 to 3 years, even though, let's say you're working an extra 1 or 2 hours, and for you, you're working like over 100 hours a week. So your inputs and outputs are, amazing. But it really goes to show that you can really do a lot, not only for yourself, not only for your business, but like you said, you have a family, you have a wife, you have 2 beautiful children, right? And at the end of the day, as chronic healers and spiritual practitioners, we want to do service. We want to provide service. And doing service directly is okay. But I think what you mentioned is you can achieve a greater output of service if you build yourself up to a position where you can have the time, have the resources to do those services without directly doing it. So, and I always find that very admirable, because even though this conversation is more about ethics, for the audience that does not know, Dr. Lee is very well subscribed to the pranic healing of generosity and loving kindness, because you do a lot of service. You actually have your own nonprofit organization. You do a lot of work for clients that may be not able to pay for your services, but you still do it for them out of service. So I find that very...
clinic is always for charitable patients. So I try. I cannot say I always do, but I try to give 10% of my patient volume here for those people who cannot afford it. One thing that I want to be able to say is this: a lot of people, if I'm in position of listening to this, why is this guy going so crazy? All the things like, why is this guy like working so late and then so early, wake up so early, and things like this. But the reason why I actually do is this, and this might be tying into pranic healing and the meditation, things like this, because growing up, I didn't think that I could. Anything that I thought, maybe I can do it, maybe I can. More and more I am doing my pranic healing, subscribe to teachings, there is less doubt. So I feel I can. And I do sincerely mean it. And of course, it's always done through me, not done by me. By that I mean, of course, there's always the higher ones and the teacher who always does great things through me. But I really feel like I can. I really feel like I can. Anything that I do, I feel like I can. That's the reason why I do it. It's not because I am, I like working crazy hours. It's not because I feel like I can. Anything that I put my mind onto it, I think I can. And then knowing that with the proper work ethics, if I'm able to provide generous and non-stealing, and then be able to be a good of service to others, I really, really believe anything that I do, I think I can. And then I know I can. And that's the reason why I'm having those quote unquote the crazy work schedules. That's the reason why. And then I think that that's what separates me from all the other things. A lot of times people say, having a clinic in Manhattan is expensive. So, Dr. Lee, I'm going to charge patient extra over here because there's no patients around. There is no opportunities around. I really don't subscribe to that, the poverty mindset, because I know I can. I think I can because I'm not alone. Whenever I am doing things, I actually, after this coming retreat, one of the master have told me to do a lot of Saranagati, which is a reverence to the teacher and to God. So I started to do a lot more of those, and then I know everything that I do, I'm always with the higher beings. I'm always with the teacher, at least to me. So everything I try to do, I do here like this. So more I do this, more conviction I have in my actions, more actions that I take, I want it to be more honorable and then more impactful to me and to other people. So that's the reason why all the things that I'm doing here like this.
Well, that was very, very inspirational, Dr. Lee, not only for our audience, but for myself. And I think you bring up some brilliant points that, number one, right, we are the channels, right? Even though we are living our own lives, we are the channels through the teachings and through the teacher. And when you're an empowered channel, when you don't have that poverty consciousness, when you don't have those, mental, emotional blocks that you can't do it, like you mentioned in your past, in like maybe your childhood when you're growing up, and that you actually can, I think that's very powerful, because if you can, why don't you do it, right? If you can, you should do it. And one of the sayings I like, and I think this applies to you, if you can do it, you will do it. If you will do it, you should be doing it right now, right? And if you're doing it right now, it's going to happen, right? So I can, I will, I am, right? I am doing it. And I think that's a perfect analogy for everything that, you're describing, because, for you, when you have an idea, and I can say this personally, you take action on it right away. When you have something where you see an opportunity, you take action right away. And I think for a lot of, pranic healers, energy healers, a lot of people on the spiritual path, we tend to overthink things, but it's very important to be grounded, right? And to realize, like you mentioned, you are the channel. If you can do it, take the proper action, and you'll be led to the proper result. So that's really inspiring for me, because, me and Dr. Lee, we have a kind of a long relationship, and that's one of the things that I need to work on. So, Dr. Lee's laughing, so he knows. But as we close, yeah.
There was just one more thing. Actually, I want to be able to share this. Since we're in this topic, I'll just share just a little more, if that's okay with you.
No, absolutely.
So for the past, because I've been in pranic healing for the past 15 years, you said, right? For the first 10 years or so, certain areas of my life I was holding on, and I said, man, I don't want to give myself into teaching and things like this. A certain point of my weakness and things like this, I was not fully conductive and conducive, so I was resistant to many ways. But once I started to be having more wholesome lifestyle, wholesome
Yeah.
thoughts and the wholesome things, and I'm really open up to the higher beings flowing through me. I start to realize, as long as we're doing right thing and right actions, really, and the right thoughts, then you whatever you do can be honorable thing, and there's absolutely no reason why what you do is 10, 20 times more impactful, because if you do the right thing, right actions, right thoughts, it should be getting there. I mean, I'm not saying I'm I'm
Mhm.
far away from, where I need to be, but at least I try, just like everybody else.
Right.
I try. Does that
Yeah.
make
Yeah. Absolutely. Right. And you're trying, right? When you have the right thoughts, your right words, right actions, you're that aligned channel. And like you mentioned, through the teachings, through the teacher, um, your inputs reflect your outputs, right? If you're doing your inputs right, the outputs will take care of itself eventually. At least that's the plan.
I'm
So
not afraid
so
to ask
thank you
for
for
help.
sharing
Yeah, I'm not
that.
afraid to ask for help. And then I always say, listen, like, dear God, dear Master, I'll do. I work hard, and I help more people. More things come to me, and I work harder, and then more things flow through me, and I give more. That's how I envision it, and then that's exactly
Mhm.
how I envision things to be, at least with me, at least for the time being.
Hmm.
So
Well, Dr. Dalit, you are the model pranic healer, arhatic yogi in terms of your personal ethics, right? Your work ethics and your medical ethics, and of course spiritual ethics. So I'm very grateful for your time on today, because I know you have to get to patients in about 5 minutes. Speaking of your ethics, but just before I let you go, Dr. Lee, do you have any last words of advice for any pranic healer, or even non-pranic healer, any person off the street, right? On the topic of what we talked about, ethics in terms of your personal life, your work life, what would that one advice be to them?
believe in yourself, because what you do is with God. So as long as you're doing wholesome things and you have wholesome actions and wholesome goals, then believe in
Right.
yourself, and then you can do it because you're with God. That's exactly what I want
Mm,
to say.
simple and straight to the point. Believe in yourself, because you're with God. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Lee. It's been an amazing time in conversation with you. As we know, Dr. Lee is a very great friend and colleague of mine. So everything that he speaks the truth, because I'm the firsthand witness of his 4 a.m. text while I'm still in bed, and he's like working out at
But
5 a.m.
that's exactly when I text all the people for the business relays. I do apologize for texting you early, but
No, it's his work ethics. It's reflecting it. And he practices what he preaches, and that's why Dr. Lee is such a role model for me. So I think that what we spoken to today is going to be really beneficial for everyone out there. All right, so thank you, Dr. Lee, and Atma Namaste, everyone. We hope to see you in the next podcast.